everyone, and welcome back to Erasing the Stigma. Today, I'm so excited to be here with Miss Melissa Mack, who is the art teacher, coordinator, and language specialist at the Cambridge School. So, welcome, and would you be able to provide a brief snapshot of what the Cambridge School is and your role at the school?
Sure. So the Cambridge School is located in Pennington, New Jersey, and we are a K through 12 independent school that specializes in learning differences, specifically dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD, auditory processing disorder, among many others. And my role is the art teacher, and I teach all levels. And I also coordinate art integration throughout the rest of the curriculum. And I'm also certified in the Wilson language program, which all of the teachers at Cambridge School are certified in.
That is so amazing. And what I love about the Cambridge School and just the whole setup about it is that it's a place specifically for kids who learn differently. And it's a safe environment for all kids where sometimes parents might not even know that they have a resource like the Cambridge School where the kids
Yeah.
can go and thrive. So for parents who don't necessarily know that there are schools like the Cambridge School around the country and around the world that really specialize in learning differences. Would you be able to describe what makes the Cambridge School teaching structure and learning environment different from most schools?
Sure. So we have small class sizes, which is huge when you're talking about learning differences. So students really get the specialized attention that they need. We provide language periods 3 times a day, and that's 45 minutes each. And again, all of our teachers are certified in our programs, the Wilson Reading Program, or in Gillingham, Linden Mood Bell Learning Processes, the Hockman Writing Program, Framing Your Thoughts. So we are fully trained, and we also give direct, explicit instruction throughout our lessons. And we do a lot of multi-sensory teaching and methods to help our students learn.
That is really amazing. And why I like learning about and pointing out the more unique aspects about schools like the Cambridge School that are beneficial to students with learning differences is that I think it's super beneficial for parents just to understand how a teaching environment that's specifically set up to a kid, possibly like their own, can benefit their own kid. So, say even their kid can't necessarily get to a school like the Cambridge School, they don't have the resources to bring their child to one of these schools in their at-home environment. Maybe they can mimic this environment with one-on-one instruction and breaking down this instruction. Or if their child is of high school age going into college, you could also look for some of those characteristics in colleges, like small colleges that will have a small class size. So that's really cool. And something that makes you amazing is that you're the art teacher. And so you work specifically with kids who have learning differences, but in an artistic environment. So, has there been any aspects of your job as an art teacher that has changed or is more so unique because you're specifically working with kids with learning differences?
Yeah, so I think again, what the most unique part of the Cambridge School is the small class sizes. So I have no more than 10 students in the class, and some of my younger grades, I even have less, 5, 6 kids. So I'm able to really hone in on some skills. For instance, right now, we just finished up a project learning about Faith Ringgold, who makes story quilts. And part of learning about her is knowing that she can sew quilts. So I had all my students learn how to sew on a sewing machine. So having only no more than 10 students, I was able to sit with each of them and show them how to use the machine, how to sew, how to make a quilted border for their project. So little things like that make a big difference, something that they wouldn't get in a larger class setting. And along with that, we also get to use a lot of materials because, again, smaller kids, less supplies I need per material. So we have pottery wheels, and we do watercolors, acrylic paint, printmaking, plaster gauze, weaving. There's so much I can do because I have smaller class sizes.
That is really cool,
Yeah.
especially because there's so many things that they can do that's tactile based. I remember in my elementary school, I had the opportunity to do pottery, and that was definitely one of my favorite things
Yeah.
because it's very tactile based, which is so amazing. And I bet one of the other advantages of having smaller class sizes is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it might be easier to have the opportunity to break down information to the students and accommodate some students who have to have the information broken down into a more so precise way. And so if that is the case, what advice would you give to parents who are maybe instructing their kids at home, or teachers who don't necessarily have a smaller class size, but would like to be able to break down their classroom information or what they're teaching in a way in which their kids with learning differences would have a better opportunity at understanding? So, how would you advise them to break down the information just in a general way so it's beneficial
Yeah.
for these kids?
Sure. So one of the strategies that I really like, and you can Google this and get some more information on it. It's called Get Ready, Do Done, and it actually works backwards. So you show the student your expectation, so what the project might look like when it's done. Then you show them the steps it takes. And whenever I'm reviewing steps with my classes, I always try to think of it as like one, two, three, and small, concise phrases so they remember them. And then the last part of the get ready, do done is the get ready part. So it's what do we need to actually make the project? So before we start any big project, we'll go over all these things. And on the board, I'll list, okay, so to get ready, you need a pencil, a ruler, crayons. And so it's already listed for them. But then, of course, we'll do the steps and they'll remember those concise phrases. So as an example, we are on the pottery wheel right now. And so for my little guys, I have to demonstrate how to go on the pottery wheel. But of course, then it's their turn. So I'll say something like, okay, first, form ball. Second, put on wheel. Third, wet hands. Fourth, turn on wheel. So then they'll repeat that back to me and then they'll get started. So I always like to chunk it in like 3 or 4 steps and keep it very concise for them. And I do that just about with every project. And I always, with the little ones, I'll sit on the carpet with them and demonstrate. So we're also in a circle. We have eye contact, which I think is always important. So I know that they are listening to me, and that they're focused. So yeah, my tips for the parents are definitely short, concise directions.
That is an amazing tip. And something that I find so interesting when I'm learning about like teaching methods and tips that teachers who work with kids with learning differences have is that it's so applicable to everyone and helpful and beneficial to everyone. So it does make, in a sense, creating an inclusive learning environment a little easier in the sense that if you're integrating something for a student with a learning difference, it might also be very beneficial for everyone else. And like what I find really cool is how you show the project in a backward sort of sense of like showing the final project first and then getting the materials last so the kids can kind of see like why they need specific materials, and that also might help them remember what they need. So I think that that is something that parents can definitely integrate in their house, and even if they don't have all kids with learning differences, it can help all of their kids, and same with teachers in that sort of sense. So when your kids are creating their art projects, they might come across some frustrations of the art project not necessarily turning out how they want. And the reason why I bring up these frustrations is because I feel like for a student with a language-based learning difference, these kind of frustrations might come up outside of their art class, whether it's in an academic space where their homework or their classwork isn't necessarily turning out how they want because of their language-based learning difference. So going back to the art space, when a child is having a difficulty with grasping a concept or getting it to turn out the way that they want, and they're getting upset with themselves, what do you tell them to help them cope with this frustration that they're dealing with?
Yeah, so it's what's nice about my classroom setting is that we are formed in a circle. And so it really is a community. And if someone is feeling frustrated, I'm able to sit with that student and see where the frustration lies. And I also always let students know, like, hey, if you're done with this today, that's okay. We can be done today and you can free draw, you can play with Play-Doh, you can do a different activity because for students at the Cambridge School, any of their special classes, their art class, their music class, their PE class, those are the times where they should be able to just relax and process what they just learned in math and writing and reading and just be themselves. So I never like to see any of my students frustrated, but it definitely happens. And so we take a break, we revisit it later, and I also remind my students a lot that art is a lot about the process and not really it doesn't have to be about the product. We don't have to be making these beautiful pieces every single time. It's important to create and be ourselves.
And that is such an important message. And I think that that translates into a lot of things that these students are doing in their lives, that it's really more about the process. And going back to what you were saying before, that is also something that is really important, and teachers and especially parents can do this, of creating a space where the child can relax and really feel free to express themselves without pressure. Because again, in an academic environment, and this is especially true for kids with learning differences, but I would argue for all kids, it's difficult to face these struggles and to have to persist through this, and to have a space where they can just relax and be themselves and decompress is really important. So I kind of want to turn my questions a little bit, because going back to when you were introducing yourself, you said that you're the coordinator of art integrated education at the Cambridge School. And so, for parents specifically, if they want to start introducing art integration into their child's life at home, and say they've never done art integration before, or they don't consider themselves to be a proficient artist, what tips would you give them?
Sure. So first, like, don't be scared. Don't think that it has to be this big messy thing, because it doesn't. It can be very controlled. One of my favorite things to do, and I even do this at home with my own children, is doing a watercolor resist with sight words. So this is a really simple thing you can do with like math. You can do with spelling. You can do with sight words. Write the words in a white crayon and then take watercolor paint and paint over it. And it's like magic. And the kids love it. They think they're like magicians. So you can do things like that. You can also, if your child's learning about geography, you can make a salt dough map with them to learn about the United States or whatever they're learning. I really love readers theater. That's another big one. Readers theater is so great for comprehension and fluency, and it's a little bit more involved for the parents. But if you take what your child is reading in school and make it into a little play, even if you just do one chapter, that's one way for the student to have the acting, and then maybe even siblings can get involved with making props. So that's a lot of fun. Yeah, there's a really great website that I like to check out all the time. It's the Kennedy Center for the Arts, and they have a whole art integration tab on their website. So check that out also. And yeah, I think just get some materials, get some crayons and watercolor paints and paper, and see what you can do with your kid to review for tests. And in social studies, I do this with my own child at home a lot. We'll make drawings before her social studies test. Like, okay, let's talk and draw and see if you remember the things that you just learned in class.
That's a really great idea. And I mean, relating that back to the safe space that you create in your own art classroom, that can be created when a parent's trying to integrate art education at home in their lives, and making this a fun place where a child likes to play. But if they aren't necessarily understanding something, and they might be getting upset with themselves, this could also be an opportunity to move on to another subject and have fun with it. But something that I personally like think about art education, and I've definitely appreciated it as someone in school myself, especially as when you like get higher in levels in school, it becomes less fun, I would say, like less activity based. It's really fun to like integrate that back into at least my own work at home. And I know for the little kids that I work with, it's fun for them too, because at some point it doesn't necessarily feel like you're learning. It feels like you're playing and you're able to learn through that play. So like acting, I was a person who really loved acting when I was little, and I would know that if I was able to act out what I was learning, I wouldn't necessarily think of that as learning, and I would think of that more as play, which I find is really great for the kids who are trying to um, find joy in the subjects that they might typically struggle with. And so, another question about art itself is that art has been shown to be extremely therapeutic. And so, this question is more for parents. We've been talking a lot about how struggles may arise for kids and how kids can feel frustrated with what they're doing, but it's also frustrating for parents to have to struggle to advocate for a kid who has a language-based learning difference, especially if they're not getting a lot of support or feedback from the community that they're living in. So, what advice would you give to a parent to possibly integrate art into their lives in a simple way to help them relax and de-stress?
Sure. So, I mean, of course, there's plenty of places where you can take art classes and dance classes and acting classes. But if you're not at that point, I know schedules are so busy. I think you can start simple, get some Play-Doh at home for your kid to play with, and um, glue and paper. I mean, kids love just gluing paper to more paper and popsicle sticks and things like that. And you can also just put on some music and dance around to relieve some stress. I love nature art, going out and picking up pine cones and leaves and then coming home and putting them together in some sort of design is always fun. Personally, I have a whole studio in my house, and when my kids come home, I say just go, and they'll just spend so many hours in there processing their own day and having fun and creating, but not necessarily, you know, having a product at the end, just to process of art to help relieve the stress and the frustrations of the day. um yeah, again, it can be so simple. Just get your hands moving, get your body moving, and create something. I think is always helpful for everybody.
Yeah, that's really good advice, especially because I feel that art, it can turn out to be such a masterpiece that when entering the process of creating art, some people are intimidated because they think that, oh, this has to be a masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that the process is what really matters and it doesn't have to be this big, intimidating thing, and it could be something that's really simple, is something that's really important to remember. So one of my last questions for you is for parents again, if the parent is considering sending their child to a school like the Cambridge School and they're not necessarily sure whether they should go down this route, is there any advice that you would give that parent?
I would say just come check us out. You know, you can come for a tour, you can call our office, you can email. Our website is at thecambridgeschool.org, and check it out, see what we're all about. You know, I think it's really a struggle for a lot of parents when they get to this point where they realize that the place where their child is learning is a challenge and is hard and it's frustrating. But you know, look around, talk to other people. There is a whole community out there of parents who are going through the same thing. And maybe Cambridge isn't for you or for your child, but it could be too far away. I know that's always hard. But even just coming to see what we're all about and finding a place that you're comfortable with for your child to learn is so important.
And that is extremely important. And seeing what works for you, because what works for you might not work for someone else, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And so the last question that I will ask you is, what is one thing that you think our listeners can do to erase the stigma behind language-based learning differences?
Sure. So Yeah, I think that talking about language-based learning differences is so important. There are so many people who have one of these different learning differences, and we need to talk to each other and communicate again, and just, you'll find somebody who has found a strategy that works for them and it could work for you. And along those same lines, the arts and learning differences, there are so many students who come through my door who are so talented in art. They're so talented in music and singing and acting. And it's because of these students, because of their talents, that like our world goes round. And I think that having so much pressure on the learning difference, you don't want to crush the talent. And art is such a big talent for a lot of our kids. And we just have to keep pushing them to be who they are.
And I think that that's amazing advice because if you take away that like pressure and that angst surrounding the learning difference, there's so much in that child that can flourish and develop and should be cultivated and nurtured. So that is really, really important advice. So thank you so much for
Thank
speaking with
you.
me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.